Mother, originally released in August of 2020 through indie developer Irwin Segarane, is a relatively short horror title with one key objective in mind. Protect your children, damn it! Following similar footsteps to the likes of No One Lives Under Lighthouse, Five Nights at Freddy's, Joe's Diner, The Convenience Store, and many other various releases, Mother is a first-person psychological horror that stays true to a very reliably tried and tested formula. Establish the setting, get the spooky ball rolling with some new or horrific thing occurring almost each and every night, and then sit back and enjoy the ride while the main character's situation gradually worsens until the point of no return. And to get this out there right off the bat, Mother is pretty damn good at it. With the game almost entirely taking place within a modest suburban flat, you take control of Mary, the recently widowed now only parent to Carl and Kayla, having only just moved into a fresh new property with the clear intention of a fresh new start. There are boxes everywhere, your husband's ashes need a more permanent home, and you've just been prescribed a hefty assortment of medication to help keep your head in check for the next few days. All in all, it's pretty much your classic horror trope setup of a troubled protagonist, with an easy comparison perhaps being the Babadook, and for the purposes of where Mother chooses to go, it does work to the game's favour. As of course, while initially it seems that there isn't really anything out of the ordinary going on within the flat, you will start to notice things. You know, just that odd little thing, like the fact that this light keeps turning on while you're trying to sleep. Why does the light keep turning on, Mary? Did you do it? No? Well, it must just be your imagination. Don't worry about it. So, as you've no doubt suspected by this point, things are going to gradually go sideways for Mary, Kayla and Kyle, but with the game's runtime clocking in at between 2 to 3 hours, depending on how quickly you end up getting through it, it's worth noting that Mother does exercise a fair bit of restraint while building up the suspense. A lot of the time, you'll simply be within the flat, wandering around the circular layout while keeping your eyes peeled for anything odd or interesting, especially after hearing something that perhaps caught your attention. Or you might awaken to the sounds of Kayla and Kyle prattling around in the middle of the night and end up sending them back to bed with no issue. But make no mistake, with each passing evening, the slowly simmering tension is gradually creeping in. It also doesn't help, or maybe it does actually, depends on your point of view, that when attempting to complete the sleep mechanic, you can actually hold the progress bar to flick your eyes open and scan the room, very much as you would while laying in bed after hearing something odd. Initially it appears to just be your imagination, but once the children announce that they've made a new friend called Tommy who apparently lives in the apartment with you, well, that's where the fun truly begins. It's also at this point that I have to acknowledge the game's visual direction, with Mother being another title that I'm covering on the channel that harkens back to the PlayStation 1 era of lacking graphical sophistication. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, I absolutely adore the intended recreation of this particular style that has become so widely popular within the indie horror market. As is seen throughout Mother, much of the textures, character models and environmental design is very appropriately retro, and I love it. I'm sure a huge part of that appreciation is raw, unfiltered, uncontrollable nostalgia, but whatever man, I'm getting old, and I will like what I like, damn it. That being said, it's also entirely undeniable that the quality of Mother's graphical direction is far more detailed compared to what you'd find within an actual PlayStation 1 title. For the most part, light reflects nicely off carried objects or the textures of certain walls, the tiles and paintings are relatively clear, and the restless rolling back and forth character animation of the children while they're attempting to sleep is smooth as fuck. But to get to the point of how such a graphical approach actually affects your time within the game, similar to No One Lives Under the Lighthouse, there's an unnatural quality to the look and feel of Mother that massively enhances the eerie atmosphere, with you, for example, being unable to make out certain things at the end of the hall, or even just the creepy, borderline faceless appearance of Mary's children. There's something about that I'm really not a fan of. So to jump back into where Mother is headed in terms of the plot and the gameplay, as already mentioned, Kayla and Kyle decide to make a new friend with an unseen entity known as Tommy, which then sets the aforementioned ball rolling with each and every night offering something new. At first it's relatively tame, from hearing something stomping around that might just be an inconsiderate neighbour, or the washing machine abruptly shutting off mid-spin, or a malfunctioning creepy monkey toy rolling around the place, which I honestly just wanted to smash into oblivion with a hammer from the moment I saw it, but the game did not allow me such blissful release, and the jump scare that followed makes me hate it all the more. And of course, eventually you do see Tommy, staring at you from the end of a hallway, but it's paired with the effects of Mary having somewhat overdosed from her prescription, which results in your vision warping unnaturally, and also serves up the implication that perhaps what Mary sees is instead simply a hallucination. One that feeds off Kayla and Carl's childhood enthusiasm to believe in an imaginary friend because, let's be honest, it's not like Mum is offering much comfort these days. Alongside taking a shitload of medication, she also doesn't even sleep in a bed. The two rooms are offered to Kayla and Kyle, and Mary sleeps on a sofa bed in the office, which kinda speaks volumes as to how Mary clearly doesn't regard the flat as an actual home. For someone to set up shop in a tiny office with the intention of kipping whenever possible, while also being woken up repeatedly throughout the nights by either the kids, banging noises, or something else, and clearly suffering from the effects of crippling grief, that's hardly a recipe for healing your mental stability. And it's even less surprising that Mary then starts to hear and see weird shit. She's not in a good place. I mean, fuck, the urn accidentally gets smashed within the first few days of having moved in. I don't want to think about the psychological effects of having to literally mop up your deceased husband's ashes. So with the game's setup now established, while it's certainly possible that everything occurring is all simply in Mary's head, there's one clear, undeniable element to Mother's gameplay, regardless of its origin. Something is stalking you, and it wants your children. As the game continues to progress, the horror tomfoolery ramps up to more unpleasant degrees. Tommy might snatch Kayla or Carl from their beds, or jump out at you from a cupboard or wardrobe. You might find doors, grates, lights, and other such things either being opened or tampered with, and your friendly neighbors are making something of a habit in sending you concerned text messages in regards to the banging, screaming, and overall unhappy times that are occurring within the flat. And the whole entire time, you can't quite shake the feeling that perhaps the shit Mary is being forced to deal with is actually entirely psychological. Sure, it could just be a short but sweet monster mash in which you need to fend off the attacks of an actual creature, and sure, there's certainly evidence to support that theory, but if the medication being taken is instead resulting in adverse side effects, as an early text from your doctor does seem to imply, the game's premise might just in fact be one buried in the uncomfortable combination of grief, depression, child neglect, and even violence. In short, Mother fucks with your head. And it does a pretty damn good job of it too. Now, with everything I've already said in mind, I'm actually not going to delve into any more spoilers here. The game is ridiculously cheap on Steam for the mostly fantastic horror experience it offers, so I'd much rather point you in that direction instead of getting into the story even further. Truth be told, I do feel that perhaps a night or two could have been shaved off the game's runtime in order to keep the pacing from feeling ever so slightly sluggish in the second half. But overall, Mother is an excellent indie gem that offers great results through what initially appears to be a very simple premise. Okay, next up is probably going to be something a little bit more action focused if the game I have in mind turns out to be as much fun as I'm expecting. I'd also like to offer a huge thank you to the October supporters over on Buy Me a Coffee. I don't have a Patreon yet as it's way too early to think about that, but if you'd like to know more about the newly opened Buy Me a Coffee page and hey, might perhaps like to support the channel a little bit further, the October 24th community post has got a little bit more information. I'll also leave a link in the description, and I thank you in advance if you happen to check it out. Aside from that, until next time, you beautiful Caspers.